Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Nandi. Welcome to my YouTube channel Ecstasy of Physics. In this video, we are going to have a quick revisions of momentum, which is the Unit 5 under AP Physics 1 course. It will help you to prepare the mind map of this section. So we define the momentum in terms of it's the product of mass and velocity that represents the momentum. And mathematically we expressed as it is m times v. By this way we express the momentum, and its representation, that means momentum, it is represented by p. So p equal to its m into v. Now momentum, which is a vector quantity, which means it is having the magnitude as well as the direction. Magnitude as well as direction. The direction of velocity will be considered as the directions of momentum, and the magnitude, it can be expressed by using this formula m times v. In continuations of the momentum, we have defined the impulse. We have defined the impulse. The impulse we have defined in terms of is the force applied on the object for any instant of time. So it's force times time that we have represented at impulse. So impulse, which is a vector quantity which is having the magnitude as well as the directions. So magnitude of the moment, magnitude of the impulse, it can be represented by using this formula, that force and time, and the directions of the applied force will be considered as the directions of the impulse, and its unit of impulse, that is Newton into second, and the unit of momentum, that is unit of mass is kg, unit of velocity is meter per second, so is kg meter per second. Then after combining this impulse and momentum, we'll be having the impulse momentum theorem. To combine the impulse and momentum together, we have impulse momentum theorem. According to impulse momentum theorem, on any object, if we have applied certain amount of force F, and for some instant of time delta t, then the impulse, it can be representing the change in momentum. That means force exerted on any object, that is exerted on the object for delta t instant of time. So in that case, the impulse, it can be represented by force times time, that is delta t, and that is equal to the change in momentum. So it is delta p, and change in momentum, that can be represented by delta of m v. So that's defining the impulse momentum theorem. Now this impulse momentum theorem, it is linked with Newton's second laws of motion. So from this impulse, we can represent that force times delta t. Since mass is always conserved, so mass will be coming out from the differential part. So mass times delta v is the change in velocity. From there we can say that force, that is equal to mass times delta v upon delta t, and which is basically representing, it's a product of mass and acceleration. Delta v upon delta t, that's representing the change in velocity per unit of time, and which is known as the acceleration, and that is basically stated in case of Newton's second law of motion. So this is a relationship we are getting from there. In case of momentum, we have defined the conservation of momentum. Total momentum is always conserved in the absence of external force. That means F external, if it is equal to 0, no external force exerted on the system, then in that case the total momentum is always conserved. We can quickly take an example to define the conservation of momentum. That is, two objects, if they are moving together or moving towards in the same directions, and they are having the velocities u1 and u2. This is the first object, second object. Masses of the first object and second objects are m1 and m2 respectively, and we are considering that u1 is greater than u2. They are moving along the same direction. In that case, they will be having a collisions, and after the collisions they will be having the velocities, let's say v1 and v2. The masses will be always conserved, so m1 and m2, it will be remaining same. Now, according to conservation of momentum, we can say the total momentum before the collision, that is m1 e1 plus m2 u2. That's representing the total momentum before the collision, and that is equal to the total momentum after the collision. Total momentum after the collision, it becomes m1 v1 plus m2 v2. During the collisions, no external force exerted on the system, so both the objects together are considered as a combinedly are considered as a system. So in this system, they will be providing some amount of force on each other, and that force, according to Newton's third law of motion, the force exerted by the first object on the second object and the force exerted by the second object on the first object, that will be remaining same, but they are in opposite in directions. That is stated Newton's third law of motion. But note that there will be no external force exerted on the system. So that's what we have got in case of conservation of momentum. After that, under this momentum unit, we have center of mass. Now the total mass of the object will be considering it is concentrated at a particular point, and that point is considered as the center of mass. And mathematical expressions of the center of mass, that is, center of mass is basically representing the coordinates. In 2D frame, the coordinates of center of mass, it can be represented as m1 x1 plus m2 x2 plus dot dot mn xn upon m1 plus m2 dot dot mn. If you are going to define the coordinate system here, the each object, let's say first point, the inside that object we may consider there are number of points, and number of points means number of point masses. The first point is having the mass m1, second point is having the mass that is m2, and the locations of the first point in coordinate system, that is x1, the second point is having the coordinate along the x direction, that is x2. Now for the along the y direction, that is y1, for the second point having the coordinates, that is y2. So like this way, if we can define, then the location of the center of mass, it can be defined by m1 stands for the mass of the first point mass, and x1 is representing the along the x-axis directions the coordinate system, where the positions of the object. So that would be m1 x1 plus m2 x2, like that. If we will be having the n number of point masses, so for all point masses we can do the same things upon m1 plus m2 plus a dot dot mn, that represents the total mass of the system. Similar to that manner, we can define the center of mass locations along the y direction, that is m1 y1 plus m2 y2 plus mn yn upon m1 plus m2 plus upon up to mn, so total mass of the system. So this is the way we can define the center of mass. And let's simplify the case. Instead of the n number of particles, if we are going to consider 2 point masses, and the first point mass is having the m1 and the second point mass is represented by m2, and its coordinates represented by x1 and y1, and the coordinates of second point mass, it is represented by x2 and y2, then in that case the center of mass of these two objects, it can be located, if we are defining the coordinate system this is our origin. Now with respect to the origin, the coordinate of the center of mass of this 2-point masses, it can be represented by its xc and yc. Now this xc, it can be represented as its m1 x1 plus m2 x2 upon m1 plus m2, and the coordinate system or the center of mass of these 2-point masses are represented by along the y direction, that is m1 y1 plus m2 y2 upon m1 plus m2. We can consider the quick example of center of mass. For example, this one is defining a card. Okay. So here it is, we can consider a quick example. Let's consider a card, which is this card is having the different units. For example, the wheels, then the headlight, windshield, then the car frame, seats, inside that then windows. After that means they are having the different masses, different objects. So now we have to define the center of mass of the car. So in that case, we can consider that individual objects at the individual point masses, and we can consider any reference system. So let's consider the reference systems we are considering. This is the back point. So this is the reference systems where x-axis and y-axis we have defined. Now with respect to this center, means origin, we have to define what would be the possible position of the center of mass, so that whenever we'll be doing the further calculations, we'll be considering that if we are assigning that car is moving with certain velocity 4 meters per second. What does it mean? We are considering the center of mass of the car which is moving with 4 meters per second. So it's not possible to consider like individual point masses, and we can, I mean, we have to like, we can assign the individual velocities to it every point. So it's not possible at all. So in that case, that is the significance of using the center of mass. Whatever the velocity or acceleration or force exerted on the object, like weight of the object is exerted downward directions, normal reaction force it is exerted in upward direction. So whatever will be the consideration, everything we are doing with respect to the center of mass. Now corresponding to the center of mass position, we have that velocity of the center of mass. Velocity of the center of mass, it can be defined by velocity of the center of mass, that is the change in the position of the center of mass with respect to time along the x directions. So that we can consider velocity of the center of mass along the x directions, and as well as velocity of the center of mass along the y directions. So velocity of delta ycm upon delta t, that's the velocity of the center of mass along the y directions, and this is representing the x directions. Now after combining this, we will be finding the what is the net change in velocity. Velocity of the center of mass, it can be represented by square root of delta x cm upon delta t whole square plus delta y cm upon delta t whole square. So that's representing the velocity of the center of mass by using this equation. After that, in case of momentum, the most important things that we are going to discuss under this momentum, that's the collision. The collisions means it's a kind of like two objects are colliding with each other, and it might be possible they will be moving along the same line before and after the collisions, or they might be moving in the different lines before and after the collision. Now depending on that, the collisions, it can be classified into two ways, that one-dimensional collision. Depending on the directions of the velocities before and after the collisions, we can define there are three types of collisions: one-dimensional, two-dimensional and three-dimensional. But under this AP Physics 1 course, we are only having these two collisions: one-dimensional collisions and two-dimensional collision. Now these collisions, it can be classified into two ways, that is a elastic and inelastic collision. In case of elastic collision, the kinetic energy is remain conserved, that's representing the elastic collision, and in case of inelastic collision, kinetic energy is not conserved, that's representing the inelastic collision. Kinetic energy conservation means the two objects, if they are moving along the same directions or in the before the collisions and the after the collision, the total kinetic energy of the system, it will be remaining conserved, that's representing the elastic collisions. And if it is not conserved, then it's representing the inelastic collision. That means in under this inelastic collision, there will be certain loss in kinetic energy, and that loss in kinetic energy, that can be explained in terms of the thermal energy loss, sound energy loss. By this way, that can be defined. The inelastic collisions, it can be classified into two ways, perfectly and partially inelastic collisions. The perfectly inelastic collision means after the collisions, if the two objects are moving together with the same velocity, that represents the perfectly inelastic collisions. And the partly inelastic collisions, it can be defined by when the after the collisions, they will be moving separately, but there is a certain amount of energy loss, that's representing the partly inelastic collision. So under this elastic collisions, if we are going to apply the kinetic energy conservations law, so that can be represented by in terms of equation as, now to follow the kinetic energy conservation, you have to just follow this diagram what we have drawn here, that two objects are moving with the velocities u1 and u2. Before the collision, they are having the velocities u1 u2 and masses are m1 m2, and the masses will be remaining same after the collision as well, and the velocities are v1 v2. Now let's say this is the elastic collision. So in case of elastic collision, so we can say the total kinetic energy before the collision, that is half m1 u1 square plus half m2 u2 square, and after the collision, total kinetic energy, that is half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square. But we cannot apply the conservation of energy in case of inelastic collision, since there will be a certain amount of energy loss. And the energy loss in case of perfectly inelastic collisions or the partially inelastic collisions, that we can define by the change in kinetic energy, and that is equal to the kinetic energy before the collision, total kinetic energy before the collision minus kinetic energy after the collision. Kinetic energy after the collision. If it is the partly inelastic collision, in that case, the total kinetic energy before the collision, that would be half m1 u1 square plus half m2 u2 square, that is the total kinetic energy before collision, minus kinetic energy after the collision, since they are moving separately, so half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square. That's representing the total kinetic energy after the collision, and that is representing the change in kinetic energy. So change in kinetic energy, which is loss, and the loss, it can be represented that in terms of thermal energy, in terms of sound energy. So this loss are going to consider that in terms of thermal energy, sound energy means during the collision that some amount of heat energy is produced, so that will be considered as the loss in kinetic energy. And in case of perfectly inelastic collision, since both the objects are moving together after the collision, if we are going to consider like initial velocities are u1 and u2, and final velocities after the collision, it becomes, let's say, v prime. That's the final velocities of the two objects, and the masses we are considering m1 m2, and combined masses after the collision, it becomes m1 plus m2. So in that case, the total loss in kinetic energy after the in case of perfectly inelastic collision, so delta Ke, that can be represented as kinetic energy before the collision minus kinetic energy after the collision. Kinetic energy before the collision, that can be represented as is half m1 u1 square plus half m2 u2 square, that's the total kinetic energy before collision, minus total kinetic energy after the collision, that is half. To combine mass of the system, it is m1 plus m2, and the velocities, combined velocities v prime square. So that is the difference in kinetic energy, and that can be representing the loss in kinetic energy in perfectly inelastic collision. Note that in case of elastic and inelastic collisions, in both the cases we can apply the conservation of momentum. In both the cases we can apply the conservation of momentum, and as well as in both the cases we can apply the conservation of total energy. So in both the cases we can apply the conservation of momentum and as well as conservation of total energy. Conservation of total energy, that will be representing like means thermal energy, kinetic energy, sound energy, potential energy, everything is involved. So total energy, it will always remain conserved. However, in case of inelastic collision, kinetic energy is not conserved. So that's the overall fundamental things of this momentum that we have of this under this AP Physics 1 Unit 5 module.